Hi there, and welcome back to my channel. You look great today. Now, everyone makes New Year's resolutions. My New Year's resolution this year was to completely quit Instagram Reels. I was literally waking up every single day and immediately pulling my phone out, going on Reels, and just scrolling for like 20 minutes. And every single night before bed, I'd pull my phone out, scroll on Reels for another 20 minutes. And it just got to the point where I was just doing it mindlessly and like I wasn't enjoying it at all. I would find maybe one good reel in 30 boring ones. 10 of those would also kind of just suck and I would get angry at them. And obviously, we all know that doom scrolling is bad. Literally every single person who's watching this video, I'm sure, has been told, don't doom scroll and social media is bad for you and you should quit social media. And I realized I've never really looked into it super directly. I've always had in the back of my mind, if I quit social media, I probably would be a happier person. We've all understood culturally that social media has a negative impact on your mental health. But then I realized that I've never actually proven or like looked at that fact for myself. So I decided that I would make this video so that I and you could learn about how social media impacts on your mental well-being, whether it's negative, positive, and whether quitting social media is actually worth it. To be candid, recently I specifically tried to quit quite a few social media platforms as directly as possible. Recently I tried to completely limit my Instagram usage because, as it turned out, that New Year's resolution didn't really work out because I just started scrolling on Instagram's homepage. So I've tried to completely stop that, and I've tried to go cold turkey in a lot of different ways with social media. So in this video, we're going to look at 4 different articles about how quitting social media has been psychologically proven to affect mental health in different ways. And then after those 4 articles, I'm going to share my sort of views on the topic. So why don't we get started? So the first article we have is on Psychology Today, and it's called The Psychology of Quitting Social Media. And it's a study about how deactivating social media accounts can lead to less stress, but actually an increased sense of loneliness. Now, in this article, there are a few things talked about. The first one is stress. Now, I'm sure you've heard before about this comparison between social media and gambling, or something similar, where we talk about how when you look at social media, if you've posted something, there's this sense of invariable reward. Will I get 1 like? Will I get 1,000 likes? Will this work? Will this not work? I've had it obviously with my own YouTube videos, obsessing over which ones are performing best and which are getting the most views and whether I'm achieving my goals or whatever. But there's also a sense of this when it comes to scrolling mindlessly. I think one of the things that I will say now is about all these studies is a lot of them focus on the ideas of posting on social media. If I use social media, as in I post a photo on Instagram, or I make a story, or I post something on Facebook, or anything like that, whether it gives you negative or positive effects on your mental well-being because you're obsessing over your perception in the world and things like that, I do think that's maybe looked at too much compared to just what most people do when they engage with social media, which is just scrolling mindlessly. And yet that invariable reward is still very much there. If I open Instagram and I look on Reels, it's whether am I going to see something really funny in a couple Reels after I see something boring? Am I going to get through the boring stuff to get the good thing? Is it going to make me laugh? Is it going to make me really inspired? Is it going to be amazing? And if it is, which it usually is because algorithmically it has to be, then I'll stay because I'll think there's another one coming. As long as I stay on social media, even though I've just seen 10 terrible reels that I hated, some of which I got angry at, some of which was so boring, some of which were probably just ads, that gambler's fallacy makes me think, but I've already looked at 10, so the good one is coming soon. If there's a good one every 20 reels and I'm already 15 boring reels in, why not watch another 6 reels to get to the good one? And the problem is that these algorithms have been so perfectly engineered to do this to us. And so it is incredibly addictive. Now, this article says that one study showed that people taking breaks from using Facebook led to less stress overall. And I think this is one of the big things we should think about: stress. If you're constantly looking as a habit at your social media and you are looking at it for how many likes you got, or you're just looking at it too much, then it can build a lot of stress in your life. And this study showed that generally when it comes to social media usage, less usage leads to less stress. Now, stress is a difficult thing because I think that all the terms have kind of gotten mixed up over the last few years. Anxiety, whether people have anxiety, whether it's diagnosed anxiety, whether it's just you feel anxiety about things, whether you're stressed, whether you have tension. But generally, overall, I do think that in the current age we live in, with as many horrors of the world happening right now, as many joys, as well as how unrealistic beauty standards are for women, and also sometimes, how unrealistic standards are for what men should be. Everyone is majorly affected by social media. Everyone is stressed and anxious about how they look, whether people will like them, whether they like the right things, whether they like the right people. And it all just bundles up into one mix of just misery. I should have said probably at the start of this video, I'm not a psychologist. I do want to make that clear. I do not have a psychology degree. I do not have the workings of a psychology degree. And unless I have some kind of extremely dramatic life turn, I'm not going to become a psychologist. So all of this is vibes based. But as a young person, I can definitely say that social media has brought me a lot of anxiety. And I can also say, as someone who I see myself as a fairly good observer of other people, and I have definitely noticed a lot of anxiety from my peers and my friends. However, unfortunately, it's not that simple. I would love for you to be able to now just click off this video and be like, okay, so social media sucks. And then I can't really do anything about it because I like social media. But this study also says that quitting social media led to an increase in loneliness. Quitting social media completely cold turkey did lead a lot of people to feel a sense of loneliness. And that comes up across several articles. Now, the rest of this article has like a few steps of what you could do to mitigate the loneliness, but also get the benefits of quitting social media. It does end with a nice little thing though, after some general tips and tricks, which is that it gives you more time for life. Quitting social media, whether it's good or bad, for 100% certain, if you quit social media, you will have more time for other things. People on average spend about 2 hours per day on social media. I had a teacher once who said something that really stuck with me, which was, name one good phone memory that you have. If you try and think of some happy memories in your life, you'll probably think of times you spent with your friends, times you spent with your family, things you did. But if you try and think of one happy memory when you were on your phone, it's really hard. Yeah, you might think of some, I don't know, a reel that was really funny and you enjoyed that. But often I find that those stories only work when I've then showed it to a friend and we've laughed about it together. So if you do quit social media in some way, whether completely or just a little bit, you will have more time for your life. You could try and spend more time with your friends, with your family, doing other activities like exercise, which is really healthy for not just your physical health, but your mental health too. But also, it just means that less hours of your day are just being taken out. Time for Article 2, which kind of disregards everything I've said in this video so far. This is a theme when I was researching this topic. Everyone seems to have very differing opinions, and all of them are people much smarter than me, so I literally have no idea who to believe. But this second article, which I found on the British Psychological Society, says that abstaining from social media doesn't improve your well-being. It starts off by saying that we all have the cultural idea that social media is bad for your health, abstaining from social media is good for your health, which I said at the start of this video. And it mentions specifically that there was very much a fad of social media dopamine fasting that came up on the internet a couple years ago, probably. But the article continues to say that in a study done at the University of Kansas, there were no significant effects regardless of how many weeks participants were off social media. Days when they were free to use 4 types and days when they were abstained completely were indistinguishable in terms of end-of-day loneliness, effective well-being, and quality of day. Now, that was kind of a surprise for me to read because I was like, how? But yes, there are studies that have shown that it makes completely no difference. If you just stop using social media completely, or if you use it literally every day, it seems to not make a general difference on your end-of-day loneliness. I will say, at the end of this article, they mentioned something that's quite funny to me. They mentioned that the researchers had no way of making sure people were not passively using social media on their abstinence days. To get this straight, this study that was about the use of social media on well-being says there is no correlation at all. But what this study was saying is that when people post or don't post on social media, there's no effect. It turns out in this study at the University of Kansas, as far as I can tell, I might be wrong, they weren't studying whether people passively scrolled, and that I feel is the biggest problem. That's not really what I want to talk about. I think the addiction on social media is much more dangerous in that it's not what you do, It's just what you see. You're constantly scrolling, and it's not about whether you're getting likes or whether you're getting engagement or whether you're getting views, although that is a big part of it for some people. It's just whether you're spending hours of your day looking at social media. So I'm not sure if that study was completely conclusive for me personally, because I feel the effects of loneliness and anxiety come from just being on social media as opposed to posting on it. But that being said, let's move on to Article 3. Article 3 is again slightly more positive about the idea of doing a social media detox, and I found it on the Harvard Gazette. Social media detox boosts mental health, but nuances stand out. So this article begins by saying that actually, social media quitting is good for you. It says that in a study of young adults, those who participated in a 1-week social media detox experienced a boost in their mental health, with symptoms of anxiety dropping by 16.1%, depression by 24.8%, and insomnia by 14.5%. Now, this study was really difficult because they found out that the results were shockingly variable. Some people said it completely helped their depression, it reduced their anxiety by a lot, and that they would want to continue. Some people said it had literally no effect at all. Some people used the time that they were off social media to do exercise and to try and engage in healthy habits in their life, whereas some people maintained the same amount of screen time on their phones, just with decreased usage of social media. So this is yet again an inconclusive study in many ways, because essentially the results are, I don't know. But one thing it mentions towards the end that I do think is really important is the effects on social media and how we sleep. Now, how we sleep is another big thing that I'm sure everyone has heard everyone raving about, but it is crucial to sleep well for a human being, and it is definitely evident that social media affects this. There have been lots of studies on how the light from your phone can affect the sleep, the sort of neurons in your brain that are sparking because you're looking at social media can keep your mind awake at night and lead you to having a more of a light sleep. Overall, it just seems that this is one of the things that is more conclusive than the others. Social media might not affect your well-being, as this study shows, and the next article is our final one on that topic, but social media does affect your sleep. And if you are using social media just before bed, it can really negatively impact just the way your brain works. So that's definitely a huge problem with social media yet again. But let's get to the final article. Now, the final article is from the National Library of Medicine, and it is by far one of the most confusing things I have read. With tons of sort of data and statistics and uses of flowcharts and figures, I realized that I am way out of my depth here. In this study, there's a long introduction about their sort of goals for the study, and this was done across a huge range of people. There were loads of people involved in this study, lots of different studies all put together, and the aim that they had was to answer 3 questions. How is the duration of social media abstinence related to positive effect on mental well-being? How is the duration of social media abstinence related to negative effect? And how is the duration of social media abstinence related to life satisfaction? They did this whole test, and they invariably decided to use some methods that you can look at this article if you want. It's very confusing, but very, it's very informative. It's a good article, don't get me wrong, about how different people were told to abstain from using their social media for 1 week, or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, all over the world, all in specifically countries where social media has been a big thing for the last, decade or whatever, because it needs to be a sort of habit-based study. And the results were mixed. First of all, the study showed that the duration of social media abstinence has no relation to positive effect. It seemed from this study that not using social media did not improve any of the mental well-being enough to create a high positive mean. For some people it worked, for some people it didn't. There's a bunch of data that I don't really understand. Then the second part of the study also showed that the duration of social media abstinence had no relation to negative effect. People weren't feeling worse from the social media abstinence. It seemed to be having no effect at all. And finally, when it came to how the duration of social media abstinence related to life satisfaction, again, inconclusive, it seemed to have no correlation. So again, I was really surprised by this and left in, not shambles, but left in a bit of shock, because I was like, does it have no effect at all? Has the thing that adults and people in my life have been telling me for years about how social media is dangerous and bad for your social health, is it all made up? Does social media even have an effect on your mental health at all? However, the article does kind of end in the same way as me. There's a little discussion at the end of it, which says that in terms of how this affects the conversation about social media, the studies could be seen as inconclusive. They had a relatively small sample size, even though it was much bigger than the other ones I've talked about. But it said at the end that perhaps their objectives were slightly skewed, and that the boundaries for what's negative effect, positive effect, or life satisfaction are kind of too high. What the study sort of ends with is that those might be kind of unfair goals to reach. You're probably not going to see a huge negative increase from only doing it for a week, or a huge positive increase from abstaining for a month, or a feeling of satisfaction in your life just because you quit social media. Social media is not the only thing plaguing our world. Social media is not the only thing that makes a lot of people's lives miserable. But it also is some of that. And so the study discusses how there's sort of a mix of that. To conclude, my thoughts on this. Again, I am not a psychologist, but I do have a few things to say. The results of these studies are all generally saying it doesn't seem to help to detox. In some people it does, in some people it doesn't, and generally it can lead to decreased stress, decreased anxiety, but it can also lead to loneliness and isolation. I think this is the big thing that I didn't see in any of the articles I looked at, even more than the ones I said in this video, which is there's this whole thing with social media that I myself have incredibly experienced, especially since starting this YouTube channel, which is the fear of missing out. A lot of people have this, FOMO is a big thing, but specifically with social media, I've constantly thought, if I'm not on Instagram Reels, or if I'm not on any kind of social media platform, like all the time, then I'm not going to know what's going on in the world. I'm not going to know about news, but I'm also not going to know about the latest trends, the latest films, the latest things going on. I felt with this channel, like if I'm not on social media, then how am I going to know what to talk about? How am I going to know what to make a video on? But the thing is, it's all kind of a web of lies that's built by the social media companies. Not looking at social media can make you feel isolated. It can make you feel like you're not going to know what your friends are talking about. It can make you feel like you don't know what's going on. But in reality, not everyone that you know is going to watch this video or any videos like this video and completely quit social media. There's always going to be some people on social media, and you can talk to them. You can talk to the people in your life, your friends, your family, about what they've seen, about what they know, about what they've talked to other people about, and that can fill in the gaps that have been taken out by social media abstinence. It might sound like a lot of effort, because it's not just scrolling on your phone with your hand. It might sound a bit weird to do, to just like ask, hey, what have you seen on the TikTok recently? It might make you feel old. I definitely feel old these days, but it's also a way of just having more conversations with the people in your life. And that's one thing that I think is crucial. Quitting social media maybe doesn't have an insane effect on your mental health, even though I do think it probably does, and I don't know. In my experience, it definitely has done. But also, if you're not doing it, then you get to build stronger relationships outside of social media. You know, you can have online relationships with people, and, you know, if I text a friend frequently, all the time, it can be really nice. But what's even better is seeing them more often and chatting to them more in person, or even if I'm seeing them the same amount, having more fulfilling conversations with them. So tip number one from me, the non-psychologist, is quitting social media does lead you to have better friendships outside of social media. Tip number two is sleep. Oh my God, you have to have a good sleep schedule, because literally everyone I know seems to have the worst sleep schedule in the world. The quality of your sleep is going to be terrible if you're using social media. Before bed, put your phone away. Put it in a different room. Put it in a box. Put it underground for all I care. Get it away from you at least like 20 minutes before you go to sleep. I'm sure you can entertain yourself with 20 minutes for something else. Read a book. Books are great. Books are amazing. Books are what we've had for years before social media. Please, please, please do not destroy your sleep. And then the third tip I want to make is about habit forming. Like I said, New Year's resolutions are hard. forming new habits is insane. Finding any motivation to do anything is quite difficult in a world where we're dealing with so much stress and anxiety, but shifting your habits can be so important. If you never shift your habits, you will be the same person from the start of your life to the end, and you will not have progressed at all. So in terms of shifting your habits, don't every night check your phone before you go to bed. Don't every morning wake up, look at your messages, check if anything's going on. Try not to look at your phone as regularly as you do. I am guilty of it so much. When I'm loading a video game, which is another piece of media that I'm there to consume, if the loading screen takes half a second too long, I will reach for my phone and start scrolling on Instagram until it's done. I will second screen sometimes. I'll be watching something like I'll be watching a YouTube video, or I'll be watching Netflix or whatever, and I'll just be playing Candy Crush. But yeah, you have to form better habits sometimes, because the habits you have might be bad, because we instinctively go for the path of least resistance. As humans, we want to not spend too much effort doing something. So better habit forming is kind of important. And a way of getting better habit forming is abstaining from social media, at least a little bit. I'm, again, not the moral arbiter of how much you should quit social media and whether you should quit social media, but my little advice, quitting social media for at least a little bit of time is probably going to be good for you. And if you can, at the very least, limit it as opposed to quitting it completely, it will do wonders for you. I'm not going to suggest you should never open Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, anything ever again, because also some of those things are for talking to your friends. But I am going to suggest you don't do it as often as you probably do. A good app for this that, not sponsored, but a good app for this is called Screen Zen, which lets you choose how often you're allowed to open an app in a day and for how long. So I've now set it that I can only open Instagram 4 times a day for 2 minutes each. So I can check people's stories, I can look at people's messages, I can get the feeling of being, online and knowing what's going on in the world, and then it stops and I put it down. So I would say try and form those healthy habits. That was a really long ranty video. I'm sorry it was so long. I really hope you liked it. This video meant quite a lot to me because I think it's something that affects so many of our lives, especially people my age. So drop a like if you liked it, because yeah, and subscribe if you want to see more things like this, because then you will. And yeah, I just hope that you have a lovely week, and I love you lots, and bye. Mwah.